we end every episode to talk about the comics that we're reading. So what I want to do is I want to ask you what comics you're currently reading. I'll share what I'm reading, and then I'm going to also share what some of our listeners are reading as well too. So, Anthony, what comics are you currently reading that you want to share with us?
I reread Public Domain, the Chip Zdarsky
Yeah.
Substack book. That
Yeah.
book is just so great. I read it for the first time on an airplane, and
Hmm.
that was another book that I read, and I was like, why am I so emotional about these things? It's so great. So I reread that recently. That's one of those books that I know I'm going to have to reread every couple of years just remind myself why comics are so great.
Right.
I also I recently wrote an article on Action Comics 775. What's so funny about truth, justice, and the American way? And
Yes.
I really loved how the article turned out. And Joe Kelly, the author, actually responded to the article and was like,
Oh
I'm
yeah.
glad that people are looking at this, and I was so happy about that. So I really wanted to read more Joe Kelly Superman because of that, and I read
Hmm.
Superman Ending Battles, which
Mm.
kind of is a pseudo sequel to that Action Comics 77.5 issue. It's in some ways it is, but ultimately, after reading it, I was like, oh, it's not. It's not quite as great as this, but the issues written by Joe Kelly are fantastic.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then also I've been reading the current Superman series that just started. That's been really great. I love that Joshua Williamson is on Superman,
Yeah.
and it's kind of the first time in a while that DC Comics is firing on all cylinders with Batman and Superman, which is usually one's really good, one's not so good. But right now, I mean, Joshua Williamson, Chip Zdarsky, I mean, on these two like flagship titles with Batman and Superman, it's like, wow. So I go through phases of comics, and right now I'm really into DC. There's not a ton of Marvel I'm reading right now, but if you ask me in 6 months, I'd be reading just all Marvel books. So.
I'm sure. Yeah. Well, and what's really cool about writing reviews for Comic Watch is that we do get creators who will respond and talk about the reviews that we do. And so I remember you sharing that. I thought that was really cool getting that shout out from especially creators from one of the big two, the DC Comics and Marvel, because not that they don't usually, but from time to time it's more common to get it from Dark Horse or Image than it is from the creators who are doing those bigger titles, just because they're doing they have a lot of traction followers that they get a lot of tags and stuff like that. So it's really cool to be able to see that something you wrote got the attention of the creator of that comic as well too. So
Yeah.
I remember seeing that. I love that. Um, two books that I'm currently reading. One I'm getting ready to read, so I'm not reading it yet, but it's on my next to-do list, is Batman One Bad Day Clayface, which all the One Bad Day Batman comic series have been fantastic. I absolutely love it. I know some people say like there's
So
some
good.
better than others. Yeah, but every one of them I've read, I thought they were really well done. I especially love, I think my favorite one right now is the Penguin one, because I think that one kind of gives you a little bit more insight on how Penguin is critical with Gotham City. And just I don't want to get too much into it because I don't want to like go down that rabbit hole, but that's definitely been my favorite one so far. But I've heard really good things about the Clayface one, so I'm looking forward to doing that one and reading that one. The other one that I'm currently reading is the Old Man Logan comic series. I first read the original 5 or 6 that came out, I think, in the early 2000s or maybe a little bit before then. That was part of like the Wolverine series. So it wasn't called Old Man Logan's actually under the Wolverine name, but it was like a subtitle. And I really enjoyed that, except for the last issue. I thought the last issue like kind of hit a little weird, but that's because that's how they ended it. And then the current no, not current, but the one I'm currently reading, Old Man Logan series, that's written by Jeff Lemire, and I forget who does the art for that one. They continue that story basically, and I absolutely been enjoying it. Right now, I'm in the Last Ronin part 2 of the story, and it's just it's a lot of fun because it's Logan, it's Wolverine, kind of in that world of what happened in that dystopian future, but he actually travels back in time again. Like, I don't know how many times he travels back in time, but that's what's happening here so far. And I still haven't found out, why or who sent him back or anything like that. But it's just really interesting. I really enjoyed the story so far of how they're showing him going back to try to stop a future from happening, but he's realizing that the past he went back to probably isn't his past. So he's still trying to figure out like what he needs to do here. So I've heard a lot of great things about Old Man Logan. I've just been reading that and I've been hooked on it. I think it's been a really good story so far. So So let's go ahead and share what some of our readers and some of our staff from Comic Watch are reading. B Rats from Comic Watch said, I'm reading the New 52's Earth 2 saga stuff, starting with the Batman Superman arc from Greg Pak and Jay Lee. After Hickman's finished with the Ultimate U revamp, DC should snag him, and some other talented writers revamp the Earth 2 DCU. So much potential. They just need the right talent to mine it to its fullest. I've read the only New 52 stuff I've read has been the Batman from Scott Snyder and Greg Capullo. Have you read any of this stuff, Anthony?
Yeah, I've read the Earth 2. I've actually, more than I'd like to admit, I'd read a lot of the New 52 stuff. I only say that because I didn't like a lot of it.
Oh, gotcha. Okay.
But I've actually read a ton of New 52.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Yeah. The only one I've read was, or at least to my knowledge, is the Batman one. And then I read Flashpoint, which I think was supposed to be where the reboot was at as well too. I've not read any of the Earth 2 stuff. I know Superman, Batman, Wonder Woman has like the Earth 1 series that was out, and I can't remember if that's part of New 52. Is that something different?
The Earth 2 books follow. I think they start with the traditional versions you understand, and then it transitions with Jay Garrick and Alan Scott and kind of different versions of the characters. It's actually really interesting because it ties in with a lot of the bigger universe stuff they were doing with New 52. It's one of the series I actually really enjoyed from New 52. So
gotcha. Okay. And then Tyler Davis from Comic Watch said, I'm getting started on Tynion's Batman, Jeremy Adams' Flash, and reading Akira. I've never seen the movie, so it's completely blind read for me. Yeah. And I don't think I've read those either, but I'd be interested to see what Tyler says about that. Have you read those?
Well, I've seen Akira.
Okay.
I've heard that the manga is actually not vastly different, but it really goes into depth with a lot of the stuff that the film doesn't cover. So that's really interesting. I skipped over Tynion's Batman, but I'm not sure if he's referring to the Batman run or the Detective Comics run.
Gotcha.
Tynion's Detective Comics is great. I actually met James Tynion when he was writing Detective Comics, and he loved writing that book so much. That was like his child, and just that's a great run. So I hope he's referring to that.
Yeah. Oh, that's cool. Yeah, I've read some of James Tynion's stuff as well too. I think he wrote the Batman Ninja Turtles crossover, I think, if I remember correctly.
I think he did, yeah.
Yeah, and I absolutely love that. So, and I know, I'm really bad at remembering the writers and the comics they wrote and all that. So I know I've read some of his other stuff. I just can't remember right now. So, in our Discord, which again, if you're interested in joining the Discord, I'll put the link in the notes as well too. But in our Discord, Wally said, "Over My Dead Body" by Sweeney Boo to get ready for her run on Harley Quinn and Flashpoint, which I just started. Which I love Sweeney Boo. She's actually been on the show to talk about Eat and Love Yourself, which was a book she came out with, I think 3 or 4 years ago. And I have seen her talk about Over My Dead Body, but I have not read that yet. Are you familiar with Over My Dead Body or any of her work with Harley Quinn?
No, not particularly.
Gotcha. Yeah, her art is fantastic. I absolutely love her art. She did a lot of the Captain Marvel. It was like the kids comic. I think it's just like Action Comics is what it's called. But her art is fantastic, and I've heard nothing but great things about Over My Dead Body. So I definitely want to read it at some point. And I know she's working on Harley Quinn, and so I'm probably going to end up pulling that because I absolutely love her work. Joe Loves Comics said Invisible Kingdom from Dark Horse / Berger Books by G. Willow Wilson, who G. Willow Wilson is absolutely fantastic. And Kristen Ward also reading On a Sunbeam from Avery Hill Publishing by Tilly Walden and catching up on various polls. And then ODPH podcast said they're currently reading Rogan Gambit #1, which he says excellent story focusing on one of the X-Men's most famous couples. I got to put that on my pull list. I have not read that. I have not read any Rogue or Gambit series, but
yeah, you're gonna want to go back and catch up on some stuff for that one.
I know
that Mr. and Mrs. X, and there's a lot of stuff with Rogue and Gambit that's happened, but it's good. I really enjoy that as well.
Well, and I'll say this is what kind of sold it on me, and I can't believe I didn't put it on my poll list, but I saw a panel or a preview of showing how Destiny, who is a mutant from the House of X Powers to 10 Krakoan storyline, and she's technically Gambit's mother-in-law, because she is married to Mystique, who is Rogue's mother, adopted mother. I can't remember what the relationship was, but they're in-laws basically, right? And they have all this banter back and forth, and I absolutely love the bantering, and so that's what made me really want to get into that. Cosmic Ghost Rider, great intro story. I am not a Ghost Rider fan. I just never got interested in Ghost Rider. How do you feel?
Also, Ghost Rider is interesting.
Okay.
I mean, are you a Donny Cates guy at all?
That's like I said, Ghost Rider, just like Doctor Strange for me. I don't care for them.
Cosmic Ghost Rider is like it's actually Frank Castle in the future, where he's gone crazy and has become Ghost Rider. Yeah. So it's not quite the same as like Danny Ketch or Johnny Blaze, but it's really interesting. I read the first issue as well of the new Cosmic Ghost Rider, and it's not quite the same as when Donny Cates introduced the character a few years ago, but it's definitely interesting. I suggest checking it out. If you don't really know a lot about the character, it may update you on some things.
Maybe, yeah. We'll see. And then Ken also said Rogue Sun from the Massive Verse latest issue drops actually this weekend on March 8th. JT Beyond the Fandom said Spider-Man #6 Into the Spider-Verse has been a fun, exciting adventure with a ton of Spider-Man characters that are hilarious to see, but the story is great. I gotta say, I've never pulled or read Spider-Man issues. I've always been kind of a casual fan of Spider-Man, but I had to review Spider-Man issue #1 for Comic Watch, and I was absolutely hooked from that first issue. I ended up pulling this series. Have you been reading this series at all?
I am a huge fan of Mark Bagley on Spider-Man. So art-wise, I am completely sold. Dan Slott is a hit or miss for Spider-Man for me. There's some really, really great stuff, like big time. And then there's some stuff where I'm like, I don't really care for it. And one of those things just happens to be Spider-Verse. I know that's like universally loved, but for me, I've kind of been on the outskirts of it. That being said, I think the current Spider-Man series actually is pretty fun. It's because it's really just showcasing all these different versions of Spider-Man. And I don't remember which issue it was, but they talk about the Spider-Man that was accidentally called the wrong name by Stan Lee in one of the original.
Peter Palmer. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, no, it was a fun callback, and Dan Slott is so well versed in his Marvel knowledge. And it's so if you're reading that book, you have to be so invested. You have to know a lot about Marvel to get a lot of the inside jokes, but it's really fun because of that.
Yeah, and not just that, but Spider-Man was one word and not hyphenated when Stan Lee wrote it. Like, so it's really funny because when you look at that, it was like two different from that first issue that they had Spider-Man. It was like two different story writers writing it, and you know, Peter Parker and Spider-Man was hyphenated in one of the stories, and then when Stan Lee wrote it, it's Spider-Man one word and Peter Palmer. So what they did was they brought this person in as Earth 616 Beta's Spider-Man, basically. And what's really fun is that the artwork that that you were talking about by Bagley, he made it look like the original 60s character that lives in the current day style. So like his style is definitely 60s reflective, but it's definitely out of place with everybody else. And so it's fantastic. Yeah,
it's kind of like the Spider-Verse movie where they all the different versions of Spider-Man come together, but they're still in their own animation styles.
Right. Yeah.
So it's really great how they do that. And I'll never get over Bagley on Spider-Man. Ultimate Spider-Man is so fantastic, and just Bagley was meant for Spider-Man.
I know. And not to get too far off, but there was an issue where they teased that Tom Holland Spider-Man was going to be part of this somehow.
I saw that. Yeah.
And I haven't seen it show up yet, so I wonder if it's going to show up in the future. But it's like they teased
probably
that.
Like the last issue, yeah.
Probably, yeah. So the fact that they mentioned it once and then they haven't brought it up again, like I don't know if it's just going to leave it like that as like kind of just a, hey, we're going to include this because why not? Because it's the Spider-Verse type of thing, or if it's going to show up like at the end or something like that. So yeah. And then on Twitter, at Marty Stokes said been reading through Teen Titans Academy with his daughter, Flash, also reading Flash 2016, Josh Williams run, and reading the King in Black full event with tie-ins which that is a commitment. I haven't read that yet, but I know that there's a lot in there.
Oh, that's
Um,
dense. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Because I looked up on Marvel Unlimited, and I was just like, "There's a lot of tie-ins with this." Yeah, so
Well, and then the whole back, you have to read the entire Venom run from Cates and Stegman just to understand what's going on in it. So
yeah,
that's a tall order.
I know. Yeah, so yeah, good luck with that. And then at Year of the Loser, which that's a great username, by the way. I'm currently reading Stargirl: The Lost Children. While it felt like Jeff Johns was reeling in previous work from the story from Flashpoint, the artwork by Todd Nuck and Matt Herms was amazing. Whatever they were paid, double it. So that's a high praise if you're telling them, get paid twice for their artwork, So